Today on Hands on Photography, we're going to take a look at part 2 of our flash photography session, where we're going to look at the Speedlite and on-camera flash. Boy, I can't wait. This is going to be a lot of fun, and you're going to get so much better at this. Stay tuned. Hands on Photography is brought to you from LastPass Studios. Access everything you need online simply and securely wherever you're logging in from. LastPass makes security for your digital life effortless. Visit lastpass.com/twit.
This is TWiT.
This episode of Hands on Photography is brought to you by Mint Mobile. Cut your wireless bill down to just $15 a month with their 3-month introductory plan and get the plan shipped to your door for free at mintmobile.com/hop. Hey, what's going on, everybody? I am Pruitt, and this is Hands on Photography here on TWiT TV. I hope all of y'all are doing well. I'm unbelievable, as always. On this podcast, I like to sit down and share with you different tips and tricks that are going to help make you a better photographer and also a better post-processor. But this week, we're going to talk about the photography aspect of these things. If this is your first time catching the show, welcome to the show. But now I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. Go ahead and hit subscribe in whatever podcast app you're listening to right now and subscribe to the show. I don't care if it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Google Podcasts, whatever. Go ahead and subscribe to the show so you'll be able to get these automatically when they're released each and every Thursday here on the network. All right. I appreciate that support, and I appreciate you going back and checking out all the previous episodes. That way you can get caught up on all of these lessons that I've been doing. So today's lesson, we're going to iterate off of our previous episode where I gave you an introduction into flash photography. We talked about the different types of flashes that are out there. Today, we're going to talk about, in particular, the Speedlite. Speedlights are the types of flash that you can put on top of your camera and use what's called the hot shoe on the top of your camera, and you'll use it to light up your scene. But there are a bunch of different settings on the Speedlite. I'm only going to go over the basics because I don't want to confuse you. I want to walk you through this pretty slowly and help you get started. So when we're doing Speedlight photography, there's a couple of things you have to consider. The power on the light, the direction of the light, okay? The power of the light, the direction of the light, the angle of the light. Those are the three things you really need to consider. Now, there's an additional setting in most Speedlights called the zoom, and you can set that zoom to be set based on what your actual lens is set to, as far as the focal length. Today's example, I'm going to be using an 85mm prime, so I set the zoom on that Speedlite to be 85mm. What that means is the flash, when it shoots out the light, it shoots out of a bit of a more of a narrow beam of light towards my subject. The wider the focal length is, the more wider the zoom setting should be. The zoom setting should be on your flash, and it's going to spread out that light. So if you get a real telephoto lens, something like a 105 or something like that, you want to tighten it down so it could really aim towards your subject matter. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is show you what I'm working with today. I have a model with me here on set, and it's probably one of the best models I ever had. Let me show you that model. That's my model right there at the upper right of your screen, and it's just a mannequin head. And then if you also look right there at the lower left of the screen, you'll see my camera and the Speedlite attached to it. So that's what we're going to be working with today. Again, 85mm prime. Just got my DSLR connected to the screen. I'm going to shoot a couple shots, walk through a couple simple settings, and show you the differences while we take a look at those images on my computer screen here in Lightroom. But before we get into that, allow me to take a few minutes to thank this week's wonderful sponsor, the folks at Mint Mobile. This episode of Hands on Photography is brought to you by Mint Mobile. Mint Mobile makes it easy. Every plan comes with unlimited nationwide talk and text. Choose plans with 3, 8, or 12 gigabytes of 4G LTE data. Use your own phone and keep the same number along with all your existing contacts. Man, I'm so glad I switched. I love my Mint Mobile. To get your new wireless plan for just $15 a month with their 3-month introductory plan and get the plan shipped to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/hop. That's mintmobile.com/hop. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/hop. Okay, so now we're back, and back on episode 8 of the show, we talked about the importance of the light and how the light can be angled in your shot and create a certain look. With this first example, I have the Speedlight set up on the camera and it's pointing directly at my subject. So the light that's going to flash out, it's going to hit my subject straight on into the face. And it's going to give you a whole different effect versus when I change the angles. With the Speedlight, you can change the angle of it by actually tilting the head of the Speedlight. You can tilt the head up, you can tilt it all the way up, or you can just have it straight on facing your subject. Various different angles within, 90 degrees or so, and it'll give different effects. So you take that and work it in combination with the actual zoom capability of the flash. The light can really bounce around a bunch of different ways. But there are some things you have to consider. Again, we have the actual zoom of the light and the power of the light and the placement of the light. So next we have to worry about the power. So right now I'm going to go into Lightroom over here on my computer. And I already set up tethering on my camera. So right now the camera is set to 1/25th of a second shutter speed, f8, ISO 100. We talked about the exposure triangle way back in the days. Be sure you check that out if you're not familiar with that. And if I snap a shot, the camera is going to pull up this image here. I'll press enter. And we have just my model sitting there looking nice and pretty. Okay, so let's talk about this shot. Currently, if you look down at my flash, it's pointing directly at the model. And here in my hand, I have this little wireless trigger. And this trigger allows me to set the power. And if you look at it on the screen, the power is set to 1/32 power for the flash, meaning it's only using 1/32 of its potential full power. Now, if I was to change this power down, let's say I'll decrease it. I'm going to change it down to 1/28 of a second. Okay, so now let's take a shot here. We'll switch back to Lightroom. I'll cancel that. All right, so we changed the power, decreased it. Now let's watch what happens. It's darker, which makes sense, right? Now, there are certain reasons you'll want to give yourself lower power and higher power. It depends on your scenarios. Right now, that is not enough power for this particular shot. So I definitely want to make sure it's set to 1/32 in this scenario. So I'm going to change it back here on my little trigger, 1/32. And then we'll take one more shot. And there you go. So now that looks really, really good. Quite honestly, it's what they call flat lighting, meaning the light is coming straight on and it's washing across the subject. Especially when you're doing this in portraits, it tends to wipe away the blemishes of the skin. Sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes. But what happens if we change the angle of that light? So I'm going to walk over here and I'm going to tilt the angle of the light up about 45 degrees and we'll see what happens. So let me walk over here and switch this over. All right, so now I've switched it over. And we'll do a little bit of a test shot here. Make sure the trigger is still going to fire. Yep, we're good to go. So now let's switch over to Lightroom and show you this shot. Now, I didn't change any of the settings. The camera is still set to 1/32 power, but I moved the way the light is actually going to fire out from the flash. So, of course, that's presenting a problem to my subject matter. There's a couple things that I can do. I can increase the power, which is what I'm going to do here, or I could actually change my camera settings. But instead, I'm just going to increase the power a little bit. I'm going to take it up to 1/8 power, which is almost full power. It's getting pretty close. So now we'll take another photograph. Okay, so now we have a lot more light showing up on here. It's actually pretty beautiful soft light. Now notice when we change this angle, we're getting more shadows at the bottom of the subject here. And sometimes that's good depending on your scenario. Depends on the actual mood and actual look that you're trying to present. But just understand that's something that you have in your toolkit, just to to be a little bit more artistic and play around with what you're trying to present. So now let's think about a scenario, say like let's say you're out at an after party or something. You got hired to shoot photos for social media for an after party, and they have it at this little bar or whatnot. You don't necessarily want to have that flash angled directly at their face like that, because you're going to blind everybody at the party. But if you have it angled straight out at 45 degrees, you're going to be able to get just the tops of their heads. And sometimes that'll work pretty good. Sometimes it's hit or miss. But if you're in a place that's, say, like my studio here, that has ceilings that's roughly 10 to 12 feet in height, you can point your flash straight up and bounce the light off of the ceiling back down to your subject matter. And it's going to be a nice soft light because it's spreading out. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and demonstrate just tilting that head straight up real quick here. So give me a second to walk over there. Okay, so now it's pointing straight up. And what we're hoping is going to happen, the light is going to hit the ceiling and bounce down. I already know what's going to happen. It's not what you think. So I'm just going to show you anyway, just as an example. So we got it set to 1/8 of a power. Remember, we didn't change the power setting. Take the shot here, hop into Lightroom. There. Now there is a little bit of light, but not enough light. So now let's change the power on the trigger here. We're going to take it up to half power. Okay, so now I'm going to fire the camera. Boom, a lot more light coming out. Boom, look at that. See how beautiful that is? Let's compare those first couple of shots. Okay, so the first shot was here. And that's the light firing straight on to the subject. It's a little bit harsh. It works okay depending on the scenario, far as like trying to smooth out the skin and smooth out blemishes. But let's look at this last one. Softer light. It's a little bit dark, but we can still play around with that. I could increase the exposure. Let's change the shutter speed to about 1/60th of a second and take that same shot. Looking a little bit better. Let's take it up a little more. 1/25th. Get in there. And then also you can remember to play with your ISO. Because again, if you're in one of these parties or something like that, it's usually low light and you may need a little bit higher ISO. Yeah, see, now we're getting there. See, it's a little too hot now, a little overexposed. So let's dial that shutter speed back. And this should be much better. Yeah, let's get in there now. So back to 1/60th, ISO 400. That should give us what we want. Yeah, that's much better. If we compare it to our first one, it's flat lighting versus a bit of a warm, soft light. So much better. And that's something that you could very easily work with in post, as far as cleaning things up and making things look a little bit better. But that is going to do it for this week's episode. Again, this is just a beginner course regarding speedlight and flash photography. We're going to do some more with this. We're going to get into off-camera flash. We're going to get into setting up multi-flash photography and everything. It's going to be a lot of fun. So practice this, spend a couple weeks on this and getting this right and understanding the principles of using that light to shoot straight directly at your subject, or just to barely feather off onto the subject just a little bit, or just totally bounce the light somewhere else, bounce it off the ceiling, bounce it off of a piece of foam core, and see the results that you get. All right. we're going to have some fun with this. We'll keep building upon the flash photography. All right, so that's going to do it this week, folks. I really do appreciate y'all joining me each and every week here on the network. Make sure you're all subscribed to the show. Make sure you're following me on Instagram. I am ant_Pruitt over on Instagram. And make sure that you have any questions or suggestions or critiques that you'd like for me to try to do on some of your shots. Feel free to shoot them over at hop@twit.tv via email. I'll be more than happy to check those out and share my critiques with you. Heck, I might even feature them on the show with your permission, of course. All right, that's going to do it, folks. You all be good. Get on out there and safely create and dominate. But more importantly, folks, be well and do well. We need that today. Take care.
Hi, I'm Jason Howell, host of All About Android, where each week I'm joined by my co-hosts Florence Ion and Ron Richards, and we talk about everything that has to do with Android. Is it news? Is it hardware? Is it apps? Well, you name it, we talk about it. We invite guests from the industry on the show. We even sometimes have people from the Android team themselves talking about what makes Android so great. And you can subscribe so you don't miss anything about the world of Android by going to twit.tv/AAA. We'll see you there.